Will they ever be independent? And who will be there when the people supporting them today can no longer provide the same support tomorrow? Those are questions many families are afraid to ask out loud. Parents grow older, brothers and sisters build careers, relationships, and families of their own. And somewhere in the middle of this, the future starts to feel very personal. There may be not one simple answer, but maybe we do not need to solve the whole future today. Maybe we need to start building it, one choice, one skill, and one small step at a time. Today, on Finding Voices, I want to tell you the story of Anna and her younger brother Daniel and ask what independence really means for an autistic adult. Welcome to Finding Voices. I am Mr. C. Over the past several episodes, we've met people who have allowed us into very personal parts of their lives. We've heard about growing up. We talk about life after school. We talked about family, adulthood, belonging, and independence. And sometimes, when we hear another family's story, something interesting happens. We recognize a little piece of our own story. That is how today's episode began. Some time ago, I met a young woman named Anna at a community event here in Calgary. We started talking, and during that conversation, she mentioned her younger brother Daniel, who is autistic. I told her about Finding Voices and invited her to watch some of our episodes. Later, Anna watched our conversation with Tina about her daughter, about their journey, about the family's dedication to preparing her for adulthood. And Anna recognized something familiar. She saw her own family. She saw her parents. She saw her brother, and maybe for the first time she also began thinking more seriously about her own place in Daniel's future. Anna didn't feel comfortable coming in front of the camera, but on our YouTube page we have a way for people to share their stories and questions with us. And that is exactly what Anna did. She wrote to us. Her message was not really about one problem. It was about three things that seemed to be connected: independence, outings, and anxiety. But when I read Anna's questions, I realized something. These are not really three separate stories. They are three parts of the same journey. And that journey begins with something very simple: understanding the person in front of us. Anna wants Daniel to become more independent. I think most families want that. But before we talk about independence, we need to ask, independent in whose way? Because sometimes we create our own picture of what an independent adult should look like. A job, home, money, relationships, maybe family. But Daniel's future doesn't have to look like Anna's future, and it doesn't have to look like mine. It has to belong to Daniel. Maybe independence for Daniel begins with something much smaller: preparing a part of his lunch, choosing his clothes, putting something in his bag, paying for an item in a store, or simply being able to communicate. I need help. These may look like small things, but small things can become the foundation of a life. And this is where families sometimes face a difficult choice. Imagine Daniel is preparing lunch. He is struggling. Anna is standing beside him. She knows she could finish the whole thing in 30 seconds. her natural instinct is to help. Of course it is. When we love somebody, we want to make life easier for them. But sometimes helping means stepping. And sometimes helping means waiting. Give him time. Let him process the information. Let him try. Maybe he needs a picture showing what comes next. Maybe he needs a simple visual. Maybe he needs you to show him the first step. And then wait. The way Daniel processes information may be different from the way Anna does. If you and I are having conversation, we may understand each other quickly. For Daniel, more time may be needed. And that time is important, because if we constantly speak, prompt, correct, repeat, we may accidentally give him even more information to process. Sometimes the most useful we can do is become quiet, stay close, and give the person a chance. Over a time, something begins to happen. The support can become smaller. Maybe today we show him, tomorrow we point into the visual, later perhaps we will simply wait. That is how support can slowly become independent. Not by disappearing overnight, but by changing. And underneath all these strategies, there is something even more important: trust. Daniel needs to feel that the people around him understand him, that they are not rushing him, that they are not trying to turn him into somebody else, that they're helping him to discover what he can do. Because the goal is not make Daniel less autistic. The goal is to help Daniel have more choice, more confidence, and a stronger voice in his own life. That is the first takeaway. Independence does not mean removing support. It means using support in a way that helps the person do more, choose more, and participate more. And once the trust begins to grow, we can take the next step. For many families, community outings can be difficult. At home, many things are familiar. Daniel knows the room. He knows the sounds. He knows where the things are. He knows what usually happens next. But outside, the world is different. Traffic, people, lights, sounds, waiting, changes. And sometimes all of it arrives at the same time. Before we ask Daniel to manage the outside world, we can make that world a little more understandable. And the key word here is predictability. Imagine Daniel enjoys going to the mall. Before leaving home, we can tell him where we are going. We can show him what will happen there. We can tell him how long we expect to stay. We can use a picture or a simple visual schedule. And before we even arrive, we have to have a plan. Where can we go if the environment becomes too much? Where is the quieter area? What will we do if something changes? And most importantly, how will Daniel tell us that he has had enough? This does not make somebody a robot. I remember working with a family and talking about routines, outings, and ways to make the environment more predictable. The mother looked at me and said something like, "It sounds like we're trying to make my son into a robot." I understood why she felt that way, but consistency is not about controlling every second of somebody's life. It is about giving them something that they can recognize, something they can trust, something that tells them I know what is happening. I know what comes next. And perhaps I know what I can do if it becomes too much. Of course, life will never be completely predictable. Stores get busy, roads close, plans change, people are late. That's life. But if Daniel has enough familiar anchors around him, a change does not have to mean that everything has fallen apart, and outings do not need to start big. Maybe the first successful outing is only 5 minutes. Go inside, choose a thing, pay, leave, and then we do it again. Later, maybe we stay longer, maybe we add another step. There is no race, because the purpose isn't to prove that Daniel can tolerate the world. The purpose is to help him to become part of it. And this is where outings and independence begins to meet. Daniel is not simply going to a store. He is making a choice. He is participating. He is communicating. He is learning that there are places outside his home where he belongs. That is the second takeaway. A successful outing is not measured by how long Daniel can stay. It is measured by whether he can participate with more understanding, communication, confidence, and safety. And when he begins to understand what is coming next, something else may begin to change too. His anxiety. I think anxiety is where all three parts of Anna's story come together, because anxiety often grows around the unknown. What is happening? Where are we going? How long we will be there? What comes next? When can I leave? Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering that your entire schedule has changed. Nobody explains why. Nobody tells you what comes next. Most of us would feel uncomfortable. Why we expect Daniel not to? This is why predictability matters again. A visual schedule, a warning before a transition, a familiar routine, a break card, headphones, a quiet place, a person Daniel trusts. These are not magic solutions. They are tools, and the right tools will be different for every person. But there is another important part, our own confidence. If I'm supporting Daniel and I do not know the plan, he may feel that uncertainty too. If I'm nervous, rushing, changing directions, or giving too many instructions, I may unintentionally make the situation harder. The plan is not only for Daniel, it is for us too. We need to know what usually helps him, what may trigger him, how does he communicate when he needs space, what do we do if the plan changes, and what do we do if he becomes overwhelmed? Because once a difficult moment happens, that isn't the best time to invent the plan. We prepare before we need it. And if Daniel does become overwhelmed, instead of immediately asking him, how do we stop this behavior? Maybe our first question can be, what is Daniel trying to tell us? Maybe the room is too loud. Maybe something changed. Maybe he is tired. Maybe he does not understand what comes next. Maybe he simply needs a break. Safety still matters. Boundaries still matter. But understanding matters too. Because behavior can be communication. And when we begin looking at it that way, we stop seeing only a difficult moment. We begin seeing the person inside that moment. That is the third takeaway: anxiety. Support begins before the crisis with predictability, communication, a regulation plan, and people who know the person well enough to recognize what they may be trying to communicate. And that brings me back to Anna's real question, because underneath independence, outings, and anxiety, Anna is asking something much bigger. What will happen to my brother in the future? And maybe this is where we need to be very careful. Anna has her own understanding of the future. Her parents have theirs. You and I have ours. But Daniel may experience time differently. His understanding for tomorrow may not be the same as Anna's. So perhaps the goal is not to place our picture of the future on the top of Daniel. Maybe the goal is to give him the tools to slowly build his own, choice by choice, skill by skill, experience by experience. We keep the activities he loves. We respect the routines that help him feel safe. We listen to the way how he communicates. We notice what brings him joy. And at the same time, we gently open new doors, not because we want to change who he is, but because we want his world to become a little bigger. When Anna first started thinking about the future, I imagined she was looking many years ahead. Maybe she was picturing her parents growing older. Maybe she was imagining responsibilities coming toward her. And maybe she was trying to solve a future that hasn't happened yet. But perhaps Daniel doesn't need Anna to solve the next 20 years tonight. Maybe he needs something much simpler from her. Tomorrow morning, give me time to try. Tomorrow afternoon, tell me where we're going. If the world becomes too loud, understand when I need a break. If I make a choice differently from you, listen to it. And when you're thinking about my future, please remember that this is my future too. There is something beautiful about that idea, because independence isn't about removing support. It is about helping someone become more present in their own life. Her role can be something different: to understand him, to believe in his ability to grow, to help create opportunities, to know when to step in and to know when to step back. Because progress doesn't always arrive in the big moments. Sometimes it is one lunch prepared with a little less help, one familiar trip to the mall, one successful choice, one moment when anxiety begins to rise, and instead of becoming overwhelmed, Daniel reaches for his card and says, "I need a break." To somebody else, that may look small. To a family thinking about the future, it can mean everything, because tomorrow isn't built in one day. It is built through thousands of small moments today. And maybe the question is not, will Daniel ever become completely independent? Maybe the better question is, how can we help Daniel have more of his own voice, his own choices, and his own life? And if we start asking that questions today, perhaps the future becomes a little less frightening. Not only for Daniel, but for Anna too. I'm Mr. C. This is Finding Voices, real stories, real challenges, and real growth. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next episode.
Thank you so much for watching this episode. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.
Join us for more conversations that matter.